I still remember that evening like it was yesterday. I was sitting alone, sipping tea, scrolling through my phone, when a photo flashed across my screen. My daughter Claire standing in a white wedding gown, smiling, radiant, and next to her, a man I'd never seen before. They looked perfect. Except for one thing, I wasn't there. No invitation. No phone call. No message, just a public post tagged, "Best day of my life." For a moment, I thought it was a prank. Maybe a photo shoot. But then I saw it. Her husband's family in the background, her friends, her colleagues. Everyone was there except me. And right then, something inside me broke. That was the day I decided. If she could erase me from her life, I'd erase every comfort I had ever given her. Because what she didn't know was the house she was living in. The one she proudly called hers was still under my name. When I was younger, I used to believe that love was something permanent, like sunlight or the smell of home. But I learned the hard way that even love fades when pride takes its place. My daughter Claire was my whole world. When she was born, I remember holding her tiny hand in the hospital room and whispering, "It's you and me forever, sweetheart." And for years, that was true. We lived in a modest little house on the edge of Boston, surrounded by oak trees that turned golden every autumn. I worked as a nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, often on night shifts, but I never let her feel my exhaustion. I wanted her to believe the world was safe and full of warmth. When her father Mark passed away in a car accident, she was 16. I thought that moment would break her. But she surprised me. She became my strength. She'd leave me little notes on the fridge saying things like, "Don't forget to smile today, Mom," or "You're the strongest woman I know." We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Until the day she met Daniel, he came into her life when she was in college, studying business. I still remember the first time she brought him home. He walked in with that confident smile, the kind that looks polite but feels rehearsed. "Mrs. Taylor, thank you for inviting me," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "You've raised an incredible daughter." He was charming, I'll admit that. But something about him made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way he looked around our home, not with appreciation, but judgment. After dinner, when Claire went to wash the dishes, he glanced at the old family photos on the wall and said, "You've lived here a long time, huh? Claire deserves something bigger one day, more modern." I smiled tightly and said, "We might not have much, but this house has love in every corner." He laughed, a little too loud. Of course, of course." That night after he left, I asked Claire, "Are you sure he's the right one?" She frowned. "Mom, don't start. You always judge people too fast." "I just want you to be careful," I said quietly. "Love can't be measured in square feet." But she was already in too deep. Months turned into years. Daniel started showing up more often, and little by little, I saw my daughter changing. She stopped helping around the house. She started dressing differently, speaking differently, almost like she was trying to fit into his world. Once, I overheard him saying, "Your mom's still working night shifts? That's sad. You should tell her to retire already." And Claire didn't defend me. She just stayed silent. When I confronted her about it later, she said, "Mom, he didn't mean it that way. He just wants me to have a better life." "Better life?" I asked. "And what about respect?" She rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd never seen from her before. That's when I realized Daniel wasn't just changing her. He was erasing her. After graduation, they decided to move in together. Claire said it would be temporary, just until they found their footing. I wanted her to be independent, but I also wanted her to be safe. So when they found a small house on Maplewood Lane, I did what every foolishly loving mother does. I helped. I used every bit of savings Mark and I had built. I even sold the little silver car he'd left behind. But one thing I did right. I kept the house under my name. When I told her that, she didn't even hesitate. "It's fine, Mom," she said, hugging me. "It's yours. You helped us build this. We'll always share everything." Those words, they felt like sunlight. I believed her. And for a while, everything seemed fine. I'd visit sometimes, bring food, fix little things in the garden. But slowly, she started to change again. The first sign came when I stopped being Mom. She started calling me Jean, my first name. At first, I laughed it off. Jean, really? What's next? Are you going to start charging me rent for hugs? She smiled nervously and said, Daniel thinks it sounds more respectful to erase motherhood. It stung, but I stayed quiet. A few months later, I called her one Sunday morning. Sweetheart, I made your favorite, blueberry pie. Come home tonight. She hesitated. We're busy, Mom. Maybe next week. Next week never came. She stopped answering calls. Texts would go unread for days. One day, I even drove to her house unannounced. Daniel opened the door. Oh, Mrs. Taylor, he said with that same smile. Claire's not here. She's at a meeting. Behind him, I could see 2 wine glasses on the table and a movie paused on the screen. I nodded slowly. Tell her I said hi. He closed the door without another word. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before driving away. The distance grew until I was just a stranger who used to raise her. Holidays came and went. She didn't show up for Thanksgiving, not even a text on Christmas. And then one day, the unimaginable happened. I saw her name trending on social media. There she was, in a beautiful white dress, walking down an aisle covered in rose petals, my little girl. Getting married. To Daniel. Without me. I stared at those pictures for hours. I zoomed in on every face, her friends, Daniel's parents, even distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. The comments were filled with congratulations. Such a beautiful couple. The wedding was magical, but to me, every word felt like a blade. I called her. No answer. I texted her. Silence. So I posted a simple comment under one of her photos. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Wish I could have been there. It was deleted within minutes. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. She had deliberately erased me. And do you know the worst part? She'd used my money to build that life, the down payment for their house, the furniture, even part of their wedding fund, all from me. I had built her foundation, and she had built her walls so high, I couldn't even see through them anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window, replaying every moment of her childhood, her first steps, her first heartbreak, her graduation. I kept asking myself, where did I go wrong? But the truth was simpler. I had loved her too much. And love, when unbalanced, becomes a leash someone will always cut free from. The next morning, I made myself a promise. If she could cut me out of her life so easily, then maybe it was time I showed her what it really means to lose something. After I saw those wedding photos, something inside me changed. It wasn't anger, not at first. It was grief. Like standing in an empty house after the laughter's gone, wondering how silence can feel so loud. For days, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Everywhere I looked, I saw her face, smiling, radiant, wrapped in a happiness that didn't include me. Then one evening, as the sun slipped behind the clouds, I got a message. Hey, Mom. Hope you're okay. No apology. No mention of the wedding. Just a casual text, as if nothing had happened. I stared at it for minutes before typing back. I saw your photos. Her reply came almost instantly. Oh. Yeah, it was a small thing. Nothing big? Small thing? There were professional photographers, designer gowns, a banquet that probably cost more than my yearly salary. I typed, I would have loved to be there. And then came the line that split my heart wide open. Mom, I didn't invite you because I knew you'd make it about yourself. I remember feeling my breath catch in my throat. About myself? This, from the child I carried, fed, clothed, and bled for? I dropped the phone on the table and just stared into the distance, my hands trembling. I had given her everything. And she had rewritten me out of her story like a footnote that didn't matter anymore. That night, I walked into her old room. The walls were still painted lavender, The color she chose when she was 13. Her trophies, her prom photos, her stuffed bear, all frozen in time. I sat on her bed and whispered, "Why, Claire?" What did I do so wrong? The quiet didn't answer. But then, through the stillness, I remembered something Daniel once said, years ago at dinner. He had looked at Claire and joked, "You know, once we get married, we won't need to rely on your mom anymore." And she'd laughed. It was small, harmless at the time, but maybe it wasn't a joke after all. The following week, I decided to visit her. Not to argue, just to see her. To understand. When I arrived, her house looked different. My flowers, the roses I had planted in the front yard, were gone, replaced by trimmed hedges. The little wind chime I'd given her, the one that used to sing when the wind blew, was missing too. I knocked. No one answered. After a few minutes, Daniel opened the door halfway. He looked surprised, maybe even annoyed. "Mrs. Taylor," he said flatly, "this is unexpected." "I came to see my daughter," I said, holding my purse close. "Is she home?" "She's busy," he muttered. I saw her silhouette in the living room. She saw me too, but she didn't move. She just stood there, frozen, eyes wide. "Claire," I called softly. Daniel blocked the doorway a little tighter. "She's on a call. Maybe another time?" I looked at him, then at her. She turned away. That moment, that single second, felt like watching a door close on 25 years of motherhood. I nodded slowly. "Tell her I stopped by." Then I turned and walked away before the tears could fall. For days, I replayed that scene over and over. Her face, her silence, his smugness. It wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about erasure. Daniel had taken my daughter and turned her against me piece by piece. And the cruelest part? She let him. I started to withdraw too. I stopped answering her rare texts. I focused on my work, my little garden, anything that kept my hands busy and my mind numb. But pain doesn't fade that easily. It turns into something else. Resolve. One evening, my neighbor Evelyn came over with tea. She was in her late 60s, sharp-tongued but kind-hearted. She'd seen me grow quieter lately. "You're thinking too much, Jean," she said. "You can't carry ungrateful children on your back forever." I sighed. "She's my daughter, Evelyn." "You don't just stop loving your child." Evelyn nodded. "No, you don't. But you can stop letting them hurt you." That line stuck with me. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the bank, a mortgage inquiry. Apparently, someone had tried to refinance the Maplewood house under Claire's name. But since I was still the legal owner, the request had been denied. My stomach dropped. Was she trying to transfer the house without telling me? I called the bank to confirm. "Yes, Mrs. Taylor," the agent said. An application was made under a joint name, Claire and Daniel Adams. I thanked them and hung up, my hands shaking. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. They were trying to take what was mine. 2 days later, I called Claire. She picked up after the 4th ring, sounding irritated. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something." "I just have one question," I said. "Did you try to change the name on the house?" There was silence. Then she sighed. "Daniel said it would be easier if everything was under one name, for taxes." "You wouldn't understand, Mom." "You mean under your name," I said quietly. She hesitated. "It's not like you're using it." "Using it?" I repeated. "Claire, that house was built with your father's money, my work." "Mom, stop making everything about the past," she snapped. "Daniel and I are trying to build a future. You can't hold on to everything forever." And then, the words that shattered me. "You're just bitter. I can't deal with your control anymore." She hung up. I sat there, listening to the dial tone. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No tears, no heartbreak. Just a calm, terrifying silence. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to be her victim anymore. That night, I pulled out all the property papers. Every receipt, every transfer, every signature. I placed them on the table and studied them like a general before war. Her name wasn't on anything, not one line. The house, the land, all mine. A strange sense of power filled me, something I hadn't felt in years. For so long I'd lived as the caretaker, the giver, the forgiver. Now I was the one holding the strings. Over the next few weeks I stayed silent. I didn't call, didn't text. Meanwhile, she did. Mom, can you help me with the car payment? Mom, Daniel's business is struggling. Could you loan us something? For a few months? Each message felt less like a plea and more like habit. She wasn't reaching for me. She was reaching for what I could give. I didn't respond, and that silence drove her mad. One evening, she came to my door for the first time in months. When I opened it, she looked desperate. Mom, she said, voice shaking. Daniel made a bad investment. We might lose the house. I looked at her for a long time. The house? I asked. You mean my house? She blinked, startled. You don't need to say it like that. Oh, I think I do, I said quietly. Because every time you needed me, I was there. But when I needed you, you shut the door in my face. Tears welled in her eyes. I made mistakes, I know, but please, help us. Just one last time. For a second, the mother in me almost said yes. But then I remembered that wedding, that silence, that phone call. I can't, I said softly. Not this time. She looked at me like I was a stranger. You'll regret this. And then she left. I closed the door, leaned against it, and whispered, No, Claire. You will. That night, I went to bed with a strange calmness in my chest. I wasn't broken anymore. I was planning, and that plan was going to change everything. When I saw those wedding photos, something inside me broke quietly. But it wasn't the kind of break that leaves you weak. It was the kind that forges something cold, precise. A mother's heart turning into a strategist's mind. For days I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Anna's smile. The same smile I used to love, now framed between people who erased me from her life. Her husband, Ryan. His parents, Margaret and Thomas, who treated me like a stain they had to cover up. They'd built a perfect little fantasy. Jean, the poor mother, the embarrassment. Keep her away, keep the reputation clean. They thought I was powerless. But they forgot one thing. The house Anna lived in, the one she called hers, was still under my name. I had bought it years ago, after my husband passed away. Anna moved in when she started university. I never transferred ownership. She said, It's fine, Mom. We'll fix that later. Later never came. So I made my decision. That morning, I went to the solicitor's office. The young man behind the desk looked at me kindly. Mrs. Carter, are you sure you want to sell the property? It's in your daughter's name for residency. No, I said firmly. It's in my name, and I'm selling it. He hesitated. Might I ask why? Because, I smiled faintly, I finally realized who lives there, and it isn't family anymore. Within a week, the house went on the market. It sold faster than I expected. Apparently, the neighborhood had become desirable. The new owners were eager. I made sure the transfer was airtight. Every brick, every inch of that place was legally mine to move. I didn't tell Anna. I didn't warn her, not until the paperwork was done. 2 weeks later, she called me. I still remember the tremble in her voice. Mom, someone's at the house. They say they're the new owners. I kept my tone calm. They are. What? What do you mean they are? This is my home. No, sweetheart, I said softly. It's my home. And I sold it. Her voice cracked. You can't do that? I could, and I did. You ruined my life, she screamed. How could you be so cruel? And that was when my silence finally broke. How could I be cruel, Anna? You got married, and I found out from Facebook. You had a wedding I wasn't invited to. You took the house I paid for, and you wanted to erase me from your story. Now, I'm just returning the favor. There was silence, then a sob, and then she hung up. I didn't feel joy. Not yet. Revenge rarely gives you joy. It gives you clarity. I sat by the window that night, sipping tea, staring at the rain-soaked city lights, and thought about everything. I had raised her with nothing but love. But somewhere along the line, love became a weakness she could manipulate. No more. I took the money from the house, every penny, and made a plan. Not to waste it, to build something better, something mine. I went to the same town where my late husband used to dream of retiring, a quiet coastal village near Brighton. I bought a small cafe by the sea. It was old, worn, and barely surviving, but it had charm. The owner, a widower named Henry, was selling it after 40 years. He handed me the keys with a warm smile. Good luck, Mrs. Carter. This place has a soul. Don't let it die. That became my new home. I poured myself into renovating it, sanding floors, painting walls, baking from dawn till dusk. Every pie crust and cup of coffee carried a piece of the woman I used to be, the one Anna buried in shame. Slowly, locals started coming in. They loved the warmth, the homemade touch, the woman behind the counter who always smiled, even when her eyes looked like they'd seen storms. I named the cafe Second Chances. One afternoon, months later, a young woman walked in, eyes swollen, mascara smeared, holding a baby. She looked around nervously before she saw me. Mom, it was Anna. I froze. The tray in my hand nearly slipped. She looked thinner, fragile. Behind her, I could see Ryan's car parked crookedly outside. He didn't even step in. Can we talk? She whispered. I nodded slowly, motioning her to a table by the window. When she sat, she held her baby tighter, her voice trembling. Ryan, he left me. His parents, they threw me out. They said I was a mistake. I took a deep breath. And now you remember me? Tears streamed down her face. Mom, I was wrong. I let them poison me against you. I thought I was doing what they wanted, what Ryan wanted. But when they turned on me, I realized I had no one. Except you. For the first time in months, I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her makeup couldn't hide the hurt. Her pride was gone. All that was left was my little girl. I reached out slowly, touched her hand. Sometimes we have to lose everything, I said softly, before we remember what love actually means. She sobbed harder. Can I stay here for a while? I nodded. Not because I forgot, but because I forgave. And just like that, the circle closed. Not perfectly. No revenge story ever does, but enough for me to breathe again. I didn't regret selling the house. It taught her a lesson no lecture could. But I also learned something. Revenge may fix the balance, but forgiveness rebuilds the peace. As I watched her play with her baby later that evening, laughter echoing in the cafe, I realized maybe this was my real victory. Not her pain, but our healing. Sometimes life has to break you to rebuild you wiser. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who teach you your worth. If you've ever been betrayed, remember, your silence can be the loudest revenge. Your peace, the greatest answer. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Jean's Stories for more powerful tales of strength, healing, and redemption. Because every ending deserves a second chance. For weeks after Anna came to me, my cafe felt different. There was laughter again, quiet, hesitant laughter. But it was real. The smell of cinnamon and coffee blended with baby powder and tears that slowly turned into smiles. It was strange, how quickly a place could shift from loneliness to love again. But I didn't let my guard down completely. Trust, once shattered, takes its time to heal. Anna would help out around the cafe, wiping tables, serving tea, talking to customers. Sometimes I'd catch her glancing at me, eyes filled with guilt she didn't know how to voice. I didn't rush her. Some apologies don't need words. They bloom quietly in actions. But one evening, something happened that would shake both of us again. The cafe was closing. The soft orange lights reflected on the sea. Anna was locking up when a black SUV pulled up outside. Ryan stepped out, wearing the same arrogance he once wore like armor. I froze behind the counter. Anna's face drained of color. He walked in without knocking, his tone clipped, cold. "So this is where you've been hiding?" Anna clutched her baby closer. "Ryan, please, not here." He smirked. "You think running to your mother fixes anything? You embarrassed my family. You made a fool of me." I stepped forward. "She didn't embarrass anyone, Ryan. You and your parents did that just fine on your own." He turned to me, eyes narrowing. "Ah, the famous Mrs. Carter. The one who sold our house. You think that was smart? You think there won't be consequences?" I met his glare without flinching. "I didn't sell your house, Ryan. I sold my house. Because your kind of family never built a home. Only a facade." He scoffed. "You just made your daughter homeless." "No," I said firmly. "I made her free." He took a step closer, voice dropping. "You'll regret this." "Not as much as you're about to," I whispered. I walked around the counter, picking up a brown envelope I'd kept ready for months, waiting for the right moment. "Here," I said, handing it to him. "You might want to take a look before making threats." He hesitated, then tore it open. His face paled as his eyes darted across the pages. "What is this?" he stammered. "Proof," I said calmly, "of everything you've been hiding." Inside that envelope was a full record of Ryan's financial manipulations, the fake investments he made using Anna's name, the joint accounts he drained, and the illegal transfers to his father's company. I had discovered them by accident, weeks ago, while helping Anna retrieve some old documents from her laptop. At first, she didn't believe me, but when I showed her the bank records, she broke down. Ryan had used her signature, her savings, her trust, all to fund his own image of success. Now, all that evidence was neatly printed, notarized, and sealed. "You've been stealing from her, Ryan," I said softly. "And from your own company. I already sent copies of this to your employer and to your father's business partner. By tomorrow morning, you'll be exposed." He slammed the envelope on the counter. "You think you can destroy me?" I smiled faintly. "I don't have to. You already did that yourself. I'm just shining a light on it." Anna stood there trembling. "Ryan, is it true?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her. And for the first time, his confidence cracked. Then, without another word, he stormed out into the night, his tires screeching against the wet road. Anna collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "Mom? Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," I said gently. "You needed to see it yourself, to know the kind of man you married." She cried harder, whispering through tears. "I thought he loved me." I knelt beside her, wiping her cheek. "He loved control, not love. There's a difference." We sat there for hours, just holding each other. No words, just the sound of the ocean outside and the heartbeat of healing between us. Days turned into weeks. The news spread quickly. Ryan's company launched an internal investigation. His father's firm distanced itself. His reputation crumbled overnight. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel revenge burning in me. I felt peace. Not because he suffered, but because justice didn't need cruelty. It only needed truth. One evening, the cafe was packed. Locals chatting, children laughing, a guitar playing softly in the corner. Anna stood behind the counter, smiling shyly at customers. Her baby, little Rosie, giggled from her stroller. I looked at them, at the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, and thought, this is what revenge should look like. Not destruction, but transformation. Then, an older woman walked in, dressed elegantly, pearls shining under the lights. It took me a moment to recognize her. Margaret, Ryan's mother. She approached the counter, her voice low, sharp as ever. Mrs. Carter. Margaret, I greeted calmly. She looked around the cafe, clearly uncomfortable. You've made quite a name for yourself. I didn't need to ruin anyone's to do it, I replied. She hesitated, then sighed. Ryan's lost everything. His job, his reputation. He blames you. I smiled sadly. He should blame his greed. Margaret's gaze softened slightly. Anna deserves better. I know I was cruel to you. But she's still my daughter-in-law. Please don't destroy her too. I looked her in the eye. Destroy her? I'm the only one who stood by her when your family turned their backs. Her lips trembled. Maybe you're right. Maybe we all needed this wake-up call. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she said it, but because I didn't need it anymore. As the door closed behind her, I felt something lift inside me, like a storm finally losing its power. Anna came over, wiping her hands on her apron. What did she want? To say sorry in her own way. Anna smiled faintly. Do you forgive her? I nodded. Yes, because I've learned forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. She leaned against me. You're stronger than anyone I know. I looked at her, my voice soft but steady. No, my love. I just finally learned that revenge doesn't have to destroy. It can rebuild. The night ended quietly. The waves whispered against the shore, and the cafe lights flickered warmly. Anna sang softly to Rosie, her voice trembling but peaceful. I stood by the window, the same window I used to stare through in loneliness. Now, it reflected a mother, a daughter, and a baby. 3 generations who'd survived betrayal, love, and truth. That was my revenge. That was my redemption. Sometimes life takes everything from you, not to punish you, but to push you to rebuild stronger. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting back. It's about standing tall when they expect you to fall. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Jean's Stories for more tales of heartbreak, revenge, and redemption. Because every betrayal hides a lesson, and every ending can still bloom into a new beginning. The months that followed were peaceful, quiet, simple, and almost too gentle after the chaos we had lived through. The cafe had become a small sanctuary, not just for me, but for everyone who walked through its doors. Locals called it Second Chances Cafe, and I smiled every time someone said the name out loud, because that's exactly what life had given me. A second chance. A chance to stop surviving for others and start living for myself. Anna and Rosie lived with me now. What was once my loneliness had turned into their laughter echoing down the hallway. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of warm milk and baby giggles instead of silence. Anna helped me run the cafe full-time. Customers adored her. She had my late husband's charm, his quiet way of listening that made people open up. Sometimes, when I'd watch her serve coffee to an old couple or kneel down to pick up Rosie's dropped toy, I'd see flashes of the little girl she once was, before the world taught her pride. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and the sky turned golden, Anna joined me on the balcony above the cafe. We sat in silence, watching the waves crash against the rocks. She broke the silence first. "Mom, do you ever regret it, selling the house?" I turned to her slowly. Not for a second. She looked surprised. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything," I said softly. "That house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was the place I kept waiting for your love to return. But love isn't a location, Anna. It's a lesson. And sometimes, to find it again, you have to lose the place that held the pain." She smiled faintly, nodding. "I get it now. I was living for people who wanted me small. And when I tried to please them, I lost myself. And you." I placed a hand over hers. "You didn't lose me, sweetheart. You just forgot where to find me." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't sad anymore. They were healing tears, the kind that wash away what words never could. As weeks passed, life settled into a rhythm that felt almost magical. Every morning, I'd bake fresh bread while Rosie played with flour-dusted spoons. Anna would make coffee and chat with the fishermen who came in before dawn. We didn't talk much about Ryan or his family, but sometimes, late at night, Anna would glance at her phone, scrolling through old photos, and quietly delete them one by one. Not out of hate, but out of closure. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. Handwritten. Sealed in a cream-colored envelope. No sender's name, just my address in neat handwriting. I opened it at the counter, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a simple note. "Mrs. Carter, I owe you an apology. You were right about everything. I was blind, proud, and foolish. I lost my family, my career, and my peace. But your strength, it humbled me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. I finally understand what kind of woman you are." Ryan, I read it twice, then again, and again. There was no bitterness left in me for that man, only a quiet, distant pity. Because some people learn lessons the hard way, when it's too late to fix what they broke. I folded the letter neatly, tucked it away in my drawer, and whispered to myself, "That chapter's closed." A few weeks later, something beautiful happened. One of our regular customers, a kind woman named Nora, asked if I'd consider expanding the cafe. "You could open another branch in the next town," she said excitedly. "You've built a name here, Jean. People love what you've created." I laughed softly. "I'm not sure I have the energy for another place, Nora. I'm just grateful this one's alive." She grinned. "Well, then maybe your daughter will take over someday." I looked over at Anna, who was laughing with a customer while Rosie toddled around the floor, clutching a cookie in both hands. And I smiled. "Yes," I whispered. "Maybe she will." That night after closing, I sat alone in the cafe, the lights dim, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I took a deep breath, soaking in the scent of coffee, sugar, and salt from the sea breeze outside. This was peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that grows from acceptance. I had spent years pouring my love into people who didn't value it. I had tried to earn a seat at tables that were never meant for me. And yet, here I was, stronger, calmer, and freer than ever. It hit me then. Maybe revenge wasn't about hurting those who hurt you. Maybe it was about showing them you could still rise, gracefully, quietly, while they drowned in their own choices. As the clock struck midnight, Anna came downstairs, rubbing her eyes. "Can't sleep?" she asked. I smiled. "Just thinking." "About what?" I looked around, at the cafe, at the framed photo of our little family on the wall, at the lights reflecting softly on the counter. "About how sometimes," I said, "life gives you pain not to punish you, but to push you toward your purpose." She nodded, sitting beside me. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if I hadn't come back?" I took her hand gently. "I do. And every time I do, I thank the heavens you did. She smiled, that old childlike smile I hadn't seen in years. "Me too, Mom," she whispered. "Me too." As the waves crashed gently outside, I thought of everything that had led us here. The betrayal, the loneliness, the house, the revenge, and finally, the healing. It all had meaning now, because revenge gave me strength. But forgiveness gave me peace. And as I watched the dawn creep through the cafe windows, painting the world gold once more, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the biggest victory is not proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you survived without becoming like them. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones you loved most, if you've ever given your heart only to have it shattered, remember this. You are not weak for breaking. You are brave for healing. Let their lies teach you truth. Let their rejection teach you worth. And let your silence teach them what strength truly looks like. Because the best revenge is a life lived peacefully, joyfully, and unapologetically after they thought you never could. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Jean's Stories, where every heartbreak finds a voice, every betrayal finds its justice, and every ending finds a new beginning. Because we don't just tell stories, we heal through them together.